Well, this is a really special opportunity to have both of you here joining us at Global Relay and bringing back the memories from the race in '73. Bill Wild joining us as the initial first winner of '73 and '76. Also an accomplished cyclist, representing Canada at the 69, 66,
62 Commonwealth.
62 Commonwealth Games, but 69 and 74 Road World Championships, right?
Right.
And joining as well is Max Grace, the person who came second in '73, and we'll get into some fun conversations around that, but also a winner in '74. And, in your own right, went to the '64 Olympics, I believe in Tokyo, is that correct? Yeah. And represented New Zealand in the 66, 70, and 71 Road World Championships. I wanted to get into the story around the event. And, first off, maybe talk about how you guys met, the two of you, because it sounds like you met shortly before the event, a year or two before. And then let's lead into the actual event and how that whole first year played out from your experience of what you remembered it as.
Well, actually, I met Bill on the very first ride that I ever did here. I was coming out of retirement and had not long been living in Vancouver. Had just received my bike, which had been sent up from New Zealand. And so we met and got to know each other they were very early days in my career here. We were always very keen competitors. The racing was always intense between us. Bill had a very good finish on him. He was a damn good bike handler, and whereas I didn't have bad finish, but my style of racing was that I had to get into his legs and try and take some of the speed out. Successful some of the time. But he was a tough guy to beat.
Yeah. And let's lead that into the conversation around the event itself. So start with the atmosphere around the event. You've obviously seen the races now in this modern era. How was that feel of the initial event in that first year? How prominent was this event in the relative scheme of events in the Lower Mainland or in Western Canada? Talk us through a little bit of that aspect of it. And maybe Bill, I'll have you start with that.
It was the main event of Western Canada and the eastern part too. So a lot of riders would come out. It was very high standard thoughts in people's minds as to what the value of the race was to the quality and that. So it was really good, and it improved as the years went on. So, but 1973 is when I first won it, which it was the biggest race I had been in Canada or the USA at that time. So it just it enticed me also to travel to other races which were of a high standard in the USA, back east down in California, and because those races just seemed to be so far and so above me that I didn't think I could actually do it, but I thought, well, I'm going to try. And I managed to do okay in some of the races. Went down to some of them in the USA and never finished in that, but I just came back the next year and won. That's all I would do.
And the atmosphere, I don't think much has really changed over the years as far as the cobblestones, the roads. That's probably very similar to how it was in '73, in that electric feel that you get when you stand and watch this type of race or take part in it. But talk a bit about that feeling, I think, relative to other events that you've been to in the world.
Well, from day one, the crowds created the atmosphere. In the early days of this race, it was on a much smaller circuit, so we were we were probably coming around about every minute or so.
Just about.
And it was over 60 laps. There wasn't much in the way of barriers. So there, of course, there was contact with different members of the crowd that would wander out onto the road from time to time. The racing was intense, and I think everyone realized right from the beginning that this was an important race to want to win. The prizes were good too, and there were lots of Prims throughout the event. And as I had mentioned once before, that there was a gentleman's agreement in the first 20 laps of the race that we would let some of the lesser known riders have a chance to soak up some of those Prims. But at 20 laps, then it was our turn, and the race got pretty aggressive from that time. And I think this race has always produced good aggressive racing as well, which is what has kept bringing the people out.
Yeah, 100%. So if you look at the names on the trophy here, all of these athletes in some way or form have gone on to a very successful career representing their country at the Olympics or Commonwealth Games, Pan Am Games, World Championships, and other big events, even the Tour de France as an example. From that, and it's included in the women's category of events. The winners have really been top-notch athletes. And that has instilled the history of the pedigree of this event over the years, I think, to really be what I would consider now one of the premier criteriums in North America for people to attend. Right? So after those initial 20 laps, how did the next 40 laps play out? Were there breakaways? Was there a breakaway at the end? But how did those initial laps play out before you got into maybe the last 10 laps, figuring it out?
What can you remember? I've read my logbook, so that's brought some memories back.
Okay.
All I remember from it was that at a point I just went to the front and made a charge and to get rid of everybody in case we had an accident. I didn't want to be crashing in that, and Max caught up to me and we finished the race. I believe it was 1-2, didn't we?
Yeah. I remember it probably a little differently in that I was the one that initiated the attack.
This is perfect.
Okay, I'm game for that.
Initially, the pair of us got away, and then we were caught by a small group that we eventually wore down, so that in the end it just became...
So would that have been with 15 laps to go?
That was probably with about 10 or 15 laps to go.
And then at that point in time, you would have worn down that group?
So we got out where we were, if I remember rightly, probably about 25 or 30 seconds ahead of what remained of the peloton. And then the tactics started to come about where it was really going to be who was going to go into that second to last corner first was really going to dominate the finish. And so down the back straight, the handbags came out, and there was a lot of contact between the two of us, and I came off second best.
True. I was lucky enough to come out first.
That's amazing. So you would recall it in a very similar manner?
Exactly. Yeah. He said it. It was that way. What could I say is that his hand came out into my stomach and tried to sling himself forward, and my hand lifted his handlebars off the ground. And when he let go of my stomach, I just put him back on the road. That's
amazing. Because if you did that nowadays, I think there would be some real fines with that, right? Yeah. And I think, Bill, a lot of people maybe don't realize this, especially the athletes nowadays, but over the last 12 years that Global Relay has brought the event back again, you have been officiating. And you know, all the winners get the opportunity to be in the VIP tent and experience that part, but you've really continued to give back to the sport in this event particularly.
Yeah.
And it's been amazing, so thank you for that part. You know, when you stand there on the side of the road and you watch the athletes and doing that, does it bring back excitement, positive memories, you know, from those years?
Oh, it definitely has positive memories about it and that, and just going, well, I'd like to be in there with them, but can I go that fast? It just seems that they're that much faster than what we were. But then I remember people saying how fast we were compared to they were racing before me. And it just, I think each generation just goes a little faster.
Yeah.
And that,
I mean, partly technology,
The technology,
equipment,
the bikes are way different.
for sure. You've got better, a lot more gears to go through. You've got faster wheels.
Well, the gearing's changed. Yeah. The equipment has changed. I mean, the bikes that we were riding on, it was pretty even playing field back in those days, and that to try and get an edge, you would maybe go from a 250 gram tubular to a 220 gram.
yeah.
Whereas today, and the bikes would weigh maybe around 21, 22 pounds. And I don't know what the legal weight is for the bikes now. 15 pounds. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
It's just huge.
That's a lot of weight.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, Bill, the stories that you won a TV is one of the prize for
I won a TV?
Yeah, that's what one of the stories is. At least it's in the press that way as well. You don't remember that?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Won a TV? No, I don't.
I
won a TV at some other race, but not at Gastown.
Oh, it was another race. Okay.
It was a little 8-inch screen.
Okay.
At another race, but I don't, you know, I am getting older, so my memory isn't that clear.
Right.
In that, but I don't recollect a TV at Gastown.
Yeah. So, Max, you won the race in '74. Unfortunately, Bill, you were not at the event because you were taking part at World Championships.
Yes.
And getting prepared for it. So you didn't really get your revenge on the first year's, you know, second place in that regard. But how was that experience, you know, winning the race?
Well, that's one of the lies I like to tell, because I tell people that he was in the race and that I did beat him. In the 3 races that I rode, actually, my tactics were similar in all of them, and that is, I think that I had to be the main aggressor and generally was able to wear the field down. In the particular race that I won, there were just 3 of us together at the finish. That included the race's founder, Roger Sumner. Tom Morris was second in that particular one, and he was a particularly strong rider as well. But they were all hard races, and they were hard races to win.
Yeah, and I think, you know, historically, if you look at it, even to today's age, nobody's won it past 3 events, 3 times. So there's a very select or small group that has won it twice. Bill, you're one of them with, you know, the 73 and 76. Brian Keast, Alex Steeda, Gord Fraser, and Ken Hansen have also won it twice. And then there are 2 people, Ron Heyman and Eric Young, who have won it 3 times. And I know for a lot of them, they've come back and tried really hard to get that 4th, but so far nobody's been able to do the 4 events. And if you look at these names here, I mean, they've all gone on to almost winning, you know, or being part of Tour de France and Giro d'Italia and other major international events, right? So it is amazing to see the history of this event, and that's why it's very special, I know, for myself to be part of this event in that sense now from operations, you know, operating standpoint. It was the event that when I was maybe 14 or 15, I rode my bike down from North Vancouver and sat on the street corner by Gassy Jack and watched the event, and it was one of the events the race that got me interested in the sport, where I came home afterwards and said, man, I think this is a sport that I'd like to do, right? And watching the Tour de France with Greg LeMond at the time winning the Tour de France and getting some good TV coverage during those years, and inspiring, young athletes at that time. And I'm hoping that we can continue to do that with the integration of the youth race that we have now before the women's race, that they get to go out. So it's kind of the 14 to 16 year olds that get to do their 20 minutes, integrating them in the awards ceremonies, really having a chance and a platform to be able to inspire that next generation to really take part in the sport and see what they can do with it, right, in the end. And we've had great stories with someone like Maggie Coles-Lister, as an example, being one of the youngest females to be part of the event. First race, she didn't finish. I think she was maybe 16 around then. 17, she finished. 18, she was on the podium, right? And by 19, she was winning BC Super Week events and gone on to then winning world championships in the points race as a junior, and now a successful road career as well as a senior, right? And so I think those are the stories that we want to continue to use for an event like this in our community, moving forward, right? Is there any other kind of story that you'd like to share around that era of, like, how was the communication to an event like that happening that you were aware of? I mean, you both knew Roger personally, so obviously you knew that an event was coming around, but how would the athletes hear about these events at that time?
Well, actually, there was a very full racing program. The sport had really come back into popularity, and there were far less problems in relation to putting an event on in those days as to what there is today. Certainly less complicated. The traffic back then isn't what it is today, and so it was easy to organize events. And I mean, we had a tour that used to race up to Whistler and back from West Vancouver over 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
We had an Okanagan tour which used to race from out of Keremeus, taking in Osoyoos and Penticton and Kelowna, racing on the highways there. Not a problem with traffic, and large fields, somewhere between 80 to 100 riders.
124 one year.
So I think it's far more complicated today to organize and put an event on.
Sure, and especially in a community like this that has really seen residential growth happening here in the last 20 years.
Yes.
Versus the commercial use of the area previous to that standpoint. So yes, the planning for a group like Global Relay and ourselves that support them on that effort is definitely almost a year effort to get it right and put on a safe event for
I can understand
the spectators, the athletes, everyone involved in that regard, for sure. Yeah. Okay. If we were to give a message to the next generation coming to the event, and also the athletes that are going to be taking part, maybe each of you, if you could, what would your message be to these people?
Well, I mean, I won't be around for the next 50 years, but I would certainly like to think that this event is going to continue to thrive, and it's a part of the city. I think it's a part of what makes Gastown and a special place, and its reputation, this race's reputation, is not just known across North America, but it's certainly known globally, and I wish it well for the future years.
Thank you. Bill?
Well, this race has expanded so much over the history of its life, and that I just hope it keeps on going. And I can't see why not, because there's definitely getting to be a lot more bikes around. I live next to a dike in Pitt Meadows, and on a sunny day, it's phenomenal how many riders go along that dike now, and the road next to it. It's a very popular valley out there, and cyclists of all kinds of abilities in that are riding the dike. So it's becoming very popular within the society of Canada and the province here. So if people when they want to race, and even if they just want to tour, just try. You'll enjoy it eventually.
Yeah. No, I agree. The popularity of even just commuter cyclists and overall aspect of that is growing, and it'll transcend down to junior and youth programs that are now around that even 20 years ago were not around necessarily.
Well, hopefully we can end up with some programs within schools for racing, cycling, and that. Mm-hmm. Hopefully that somebody will get that going.
Yeah.
It was tried 30 years ago at St. Michael's School, I think it was, on the island there, where the kids, they used to do the BMX thing and that. And they had a lot of riders come out. And hopefully we can get that started with the road racing and the track racing.
Well, to both of you, I thank you for coming out and joining us today and having this conversation. I know it's a special moment for us, for me especially, because I've known you, as both of you, since I started in the 90s in that regard. Just to have this opportunity to sit down and hear the stories of those initial years. And I hope that the people that are going to hear this are going to enjoy it as well.
Oh, you're very welcome, Mark. And you've got to remember that, the older we get, the better we were.
That's fair. But as athletes, that's funny, because everyone, I think, always remembers the races. It doesn't matter what the generation is. And historically, age doesn't matter on the boundary of these conversations or memories, because everyone can relate to the challenges that the sport has, the pain and suffering that you do have from falling and injuries in a sport like this, and then also the camaraderie that you build over a lifetime, with people from all the generations that helped you out.
Oh, yes.
And also now, that you raced with, and the people that you're helping out now as the next young generation. So.
Thank you.
Thank
Great.
you.